Have you ever eaten something that you thought would be really strange and weird, but later on you thought was delicious? When I was a teenager in Iowa, I thought that sushi was the weirdest food you could possibly imagine. It was fishy and raw and slimy, and there was no way that I was going to like it. Then one day, my dad took me to a sushi restaurant. At first I was a little bit nervous, but as I tried it, I realized it wasn't so bad. Later on, I tried different kinds of sushi, and it became one of my most favorite foods. Experiences that are new or unfamiliar are oftentimes scary and uncomfortable. We don't always know what to expect or how to behave. For a lot of people, listening to contemporary classical music can be a similar experience to what I had when I was eating sushi for the first time. The sounds might be kind of strange or unfamiliar or just seemingly confusing. But if you listen with an open ear and an open mind, you might find that over time, this music becomes some of your most favorite. So how do we listen to something new and unfamiliar? In a way, it's like when you're having a really good conversation. Think about a time when you've had a great conversation. What does it look like? Probably both people are listening to each other very carefully, asking meaningful questions, and coming up with new thoughts and ideas as they're talking to each other. The key is that both people are listening actively and making new connections along the way. Of course, a piece of music isn't a person, but we can use similar skills when listening actively to music. Let's give it a try. I'm going to play an excerpt from a piece for solo cello that's probably unfamiliar to most of you. We'll listen to it a few times. The first time, just start to observe the sound of this piece. How does the composer use the pitches and rhythms and dynamics? Try to avoid opinion statements or thoughts like, this piece is funny or this piece is weird. We'll talk about those later, but for right now, try to focus on musical observations and musical fact. Like in a good conversation, you're just trying to carefully hear what the other person is saying. As you're listening, make some mental notes, or if you have something to write with, you can jot down a few words to help you remember what you're hearing. All right, here we go. Now that you've made some observations about this piece, let's try to go a little bit deeper. We're going to listen again, and now you're going to be listening for connections in the music. How many sections are there in this piece, and how do they start and stop? How are the notes grouped together like words in a sentence? Just like in a great conversation, you're trying to listen carefully and see how the other person's thoughts and ideas connect together. Again, you can keep some mental notes or jot down a few words on a piece of paper. Hopefully you're already starting to hear more in the music than you did the first time. Let's listen one more time. This time, I'm going to ask you to think of a question, something that you might be curious about. It could be something like, I wonder how the composer is using high notes and low notes, Or even something simple like, I wonder why that note was played pizzicato. Even if you're not sure what the answer will be, just think of something that you're curious about. As you're listening, notice how the question changes what you're hearing in the music. Now that we've listened to this piece of music a few times, it's probably a bit more familiar, and you've started to form some thoughts or ideas about it. Hopefully the process of making observations, looking for connections, and asking questions deepened your listening experience. Just like how when I tried sushi the first time, I didn't really know what to think, but as it became more familiar, I enjoyed it more and more. Some of you might have noticed that you were having some strong opinions about this music. Thoughts like, this music is funny or this music is strange. In my own experience, opinions can be a tricky thing to deal with when you're listening to something that's new or unfamiliar. Of course, opinions are one of the most important ways that we can show what we value and what we think about something. But if our opinions tend to be negative, they can shut off further listening, curiosity, and exploration. Just like in our imaginary conversation, if the first thing that somebody said was, "You're weird," it probably wouldn't lead to much further dialogue. One of my favorite tricks for dealing with opinions about new or unfamiliar music came to me from Randy Foy, a great conductor and educator at the University of North Carolina in Greensboro. I worked with him for several summers at the Governor's School in North Carolina. He used to ask that all of us, faculty and students, add the word "today" to the end of any opinion or judgment statement about a piece of new music. For instance, you could say, "I hate this piece of music," as long as you add the word "today" to the end of it. "I hate this piece of music today." Again, it's good to have opinions, as long as you're open to the fact that your opinions might change later on. Just like how I thought that sushi was weird and disgusting, and later on, it became one of my favorite foods. As long as you keep listening carefully, making observations, connections, and asking questions, you'll find that your listening goes deeper and deeper, and you get more out of it. Thanks for watching.